I think the patient rep can play an important part in running a trial. There are issues around language and communication. I mean, obviously a clinical trial is an important bit of scientific work, and so the language that's used is often clinical and precise, and that needs to be translated really into something that the community, the patients and people can understand. And the patient rep is ideally positioned there to help the clinicians make sure that they're explaining the trial clearly so that patients can understand what the potential benefits of the trial might be. A particularly important part is right at the recruitment stage. It's really important that anyone who is thinking of taking part in a trial really understands what the trial is about and what he or she might be expected to do. And again, it's just making sure that that's explained in terms that are clear and easy to understand. So I think that can have a real impact on recruitment. If that language isn't right, people won't come forward to be part of the trial. Another area that's quite important as well is around the results of the trial. So when the trial's been done and they're now writing their scientific papers, that's fine, that's for the scientific and the clinical community, but it's also important that the patient community understands what the outcome of the trial is, particularly if it's going to have an impact on treatment, which is of course the hope, particularly for this trial. So again, it's just making sure that the language and the way it's presented is done in a way that's easily understood.
The impact that I've had as a patient rep, of which I'm most proud, was in a colon cancer trial, which had a very complicated design when you look at it on a piece of paper. The part that I'm particularly proud of is that when we sat down to discuss this, everyone felt it was a very complicated trial design. And from the point of view of researchers, administrators, even clinicians, yes it is. From the patient perspective, it's not, because you only ask two questions. Are you interested in doing this piece of research and joining this trial? And then if you say yes, once your particular circumstances are sorted out, it's then, right, we have a particular trial for you. Are you interested in doing that? So something that's really, really complicated from a researcher's point of view, when it comes to the patient, is very, very simple.
I think I've had an impact, yes. It's difficult to tease out, but I mean, one of the really intriguing aspects of the Quartz trial, which is a trial of whole brain radiotherapy in lung cancer patients, is that it gathers quality of life information by telephone call from the patient. And I can remember living with my mother and father through their cancer illnesses, and watching the interplay between my mother and father and the views that they had about the treatment and the way that my mum and dad were benefiting from the therapies that they had. And I asked the question in the early days of the management group, would you get the same quality of life answers if you talk to the patient and or the carer individually? And it was decided in Quartz that they would take quality of life data from the patient and from the carer as well and compare the two. So it's an interesting model in that it will show whether or not you can use a carer's information about quality of life as proxy for the patient's benefits during the illness. So I think I was part of the discussion that led to that. I think another major impact that I've had is that I've been invited to speak at lots of different kinds of meetings about Quartz. I've been invited to investigator meetings, I've been invited to clinical research conferences to talk about the work. And I can remember for a fact that one clinician came up to me after a talk that I'd made at a conference and said that as a result of what they'd heard me say, they were going to open the trial in their centre. And if nothing else, I'll not forget that. And interestingly, that clinician was a clinician that had treated my father.